Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon to those of you who are in the UK and Europe. My name is Vinay Ramirez, a regulatory compliance expert at Citron, and today I will be your moderator. If you are or plan to manufacture or sell personal care or cosmetic brands in the United States, this webinar is for you. To present this topic to you today is Dahlia Kelada. She has over 20 years of experience in branding, technical marketing, and product commercialization. Since 2012, she has been the founder and CEO of Salve Naturals, formulating and contract manufacturing natural personal care products and cosmetics for hundreds of brands. She is also the first to create 100% natural and plant-based topical medicines registered with the FDA as over-the-counter drugs. Dahlia has a firm understanding of what is needed to create both brands and products from scratch, all while navigating through the regulatory and product commercialization process. Salve Naturals has partnered with Citron Regulatory Compliance Corp to present this topic to you today. For those of you who aren't familiar with Citron, we are a U.S. agent who can represent your firm, whether domestic or foreign, for all things FDA compliance. With Citron, regulatory compliance is simplified. We also offered one-on-one guidance through our network of partner experts who are ready to help with any regulatory challenges, or to simply offer their support on things like conducting a formulation review, helping with product safety substantiation, legal guidance, as well as designing and conducting clinical trials. With Citron, you can even have a former FDA investigator conduct a mock audit and review your GMP processes. Whether you need to navigate your business through the regulatory landscape, Citron is there. We do the hard task on your behalf so you can stay focused on growing your business. We will answer questions towards the end. In the interest of keeping on time, we will prioritize questions related to MoCRA. If we do not get to all your questions, don't worry. They will be documented and Dahlia will personally message you with her reply. This webinar will be recorded and made available on the Citron Learn Store, which can be found at citronexperts.com. Without any further delay, here's Dahlia.
Thanks, VNA. Good morning, everyone. I thought this would be a timely conversation, although this has been in the progress now for over a year. Some would say 10 years, but I think the industry has come to know about it as of December 2022, where the new law was enacted for the modernization of cosmetic and regulations. So today I would like to kind of go through this in a very simplified, easy to digest way to where you are able to apply this to your current situation. So this is related to skincare topicals, and we'll go into some definitions about what all this is. I will walk you through some of the agenda items that we're going to go through today. So today we're going to discuss what is the difference between a cosmetic and a cosmetic drug. And most likely you are creating a cosmetic product if you're creating something to go on the human body. We will also go through an introduction to what is MoCRA and what are the requirements and how it will apply to you now, as well as some timelines that you need to be aware of, things that have passed as well. We'll also review who needs to take action and who might be exempt from this. And we will also kind of explain to you what to do now. Because if you don't have any guidance or you don't have any support, we'll kind of show you what your options are, and then we'll go through the Q&A process. At any time you have questions, feel free to put it in the comments and we'll get to it toward the end. I did a little survey based off of the attendees who registered. I asked the question, have you heard of MoCRA? 52% of you said no, 35, almost 36 said yes, but I don't know much. And about 12% of you said yes, I know a lot. I'd like to talk about that for just a moment. The people that know a lot are people who are in the industry, which means they are close to the manufacturing process, they're close to the regulatory process, or have been forced to do this sort of thing before. The rest of you are most likely brands that haven't any idea what to do or how to go through the regulatory process because you never had to consider it. So today it's more about helping you understand what you need to do from start to finish, so that way you're not overwhelmed and some of this information can be applied in a simplified way. To continue, let's talk about how the FDA defines a cosmetic. So basically anything that's intended for cleansing, beautifying, promoting attractiveness. Those are all terms that the FDA identifies as a cosmetic product. This could be anything from your hair care products to your perfume to your makeup to a rub that you put on your skin, face cleansers, shaving creams, hair dye, nail polish, all of those things that you put on your body, the FDA considers cosmetic. The thing is, some of these may also be considered drugs. And that's where I see a lot of pitfalls for cosmetic brands or personal care brands going into this space. They start making claims, they start making structure function claims, medical claims, and that's where you're kind of crossing the line there. So we'll go into a little bit more detail about that. But anything that exceeds what is appropriate, such as increasing collagen production, reducing age spots, the term anti-aging, those are all technically considered over-the-counter drugs, not cosmetic products. So cosmetic products are just to beautify, cleanse, or make you attractive. That's it. Beyond that, you're potentially making an over-the-counter drug. So if you're making a cleanser and you're putting salicylic acid in there, or you're making a claim that it's for acne, or if you're making an antibacterial hand wash, even toothpastes that contain fluoride are considered OTC drugs. If your toothpaste does not have fluoride, it's a cosmetic product. The difference between anti-dandruff and, dandruff and lye shampoos, those are usually using a zinc material and other materials too that are considered active. So if you're telling people that this will improve a condition, you're making it a drug. Antiperspirants that actually prevent the flow of or blocks the receptors for your sweat, that's a drug. But if you're doing a deodorant, that's a deodorizer, that's a cosmetic. So there's fine lines between what is a drug and what is a cosmetic. If you're making claims that this is going to condition your skin, help with eczema or psoriasis or dermatitis or skin itching or bug bites or anything like that, you're making a drug. Even the word conditions, like I said, the word condition is considered a medical term by the FDA. If I'm going to create something to protect your skin or create a barrier, those are terms that are referred to as OTCs. And of course, sunscreen, most people think that that is not a drug, but it is, depending on the active ingredient. Even simply saying the word sunscreen in a product makes it a drug. If you put SPF on a product, you're making a drug. So those of you who are in the natural space trying to create products, be mindful of that. You're going to have to play the FDA word game to avoid some of these claims that you're making. So what is MoCRA? MoCRA, again, is the Modernization of Cosmetics Regulation Act. It was established in 2022. It's the first major update to the cosmetic laws in the FDA since it was first approved in 1938. It also gives the FDA some additional authority that was overlooked when the laws were written in 1938. Ensuring the safety of cosmetic products sold in the US is the key concern for MoCRA, and that makes sense because it hasn't really been regulated before. The only time FDA got involved is if you're making drug claims or people were complaining about your product having an adverse event reaction. So all cosmetic manufacturing facilities that make cosmetic products that are distributed in the United States apply. Okay, so MoCRA involves various categories. So the things that you're going to have to start doing as a cosmetic brand are registering your facility if you are a manufacturer. Even if you're manufacturing something for somebody else, you have to have product registrations. You have to start reporting adverse event reporting, which we'll talk about a little bit later. We'll go into a little bit more detail about what is an adverse event. You'll have to start making changes to your labels and addressing new allergens such as fragrance. Safety substantiation is a new required thing, which means you're going to have to test your product for safety. And we'll go into, again, more detail. GMP is required, which means you're following safety protocols in the lab. You're avoiding cross-contamination. You have clean environment, safe materials. You're wearing PPE. There's a whole list of criteria that involve GMP guidelines. And of course, MoCRA will now require the FDA to have the facility to do mandatory recalls. So if you're violating some of their new laws for MoCRA, you can either voluntarily do recalls or they will force a mandatory recall for you. And no animal testing is required now. And that's for OTC as well as cosmetic. You don't have to go through the animal testing phase anymore. It's not banned. Animal testing is not banned. It's just not required at this time. So let's talk about the system that they're using. The FDA has established something called Cosmetics Direct, and it's basically an online portal where you are to do your submissions. And there are, again, two parts for submissions, the facility as well as your product listing. If you are a facility, these are the things that are being asked of you in the portal. You have to establish a federal establishment register, which is an FEI number that basically says you're a manufacturer. You'll have to have a DUNS number. A cosmetic and you can also identify if you're selling a cosmetic, an OTC, or both, because you can actually register your OTCs in the same platform. They're going to ask you information like your facility, your address, email, and phone number details. And they're going to ask you who is the responsible person at your company. I'll explain what that is in just a moment. But if you are selling a product in the United States, you must have a U.S. agent. If you are a foreign company, or if you're domestic, you have to make sure that you have a domestic person to address or facilitate some of this registration. And if you fail to register, again, mandatory recall for all products manufactured by that facility. That's really bad if you're a contract manufacturer and you're not registered and you're making products for so many brands. Because if the FDA identifies that you must register, then you're kind of out of luck. And you have to amend some of those issues before you can continue selling the product. It's really bad for business. The next thing you need to do is plan to register your products. So they're going to expect that you're going to register each product in commerce. Again, you're going to need an FEI number. But if you are not a manufacturer, where do you get that FEI number? You need to go back to your manufacturer and get that information. You'll be expected to market all brand names, as well as all the label names that you put on the actual products themselves. You'll be asked to identify the category, and I'll show you a list of this in this presentation. You'll be asked to identify who the responsible person is and their contact information. List every single ingredient and every single product that you're registering. You will also be asked to identify if that product is for professional use or not. And you'll be able to upload your label information and product image if necessary. One thing that's missing from this list here is being able to provide safety substantiation data, which basically shows the FDA that you've done testing. And they're also going to ask you for a link to your product page. Again, anything that is manufactured or intended to be sold in the United States, regardless if you're a foreign company or domestic, you still have to register. You do not have to register your product if you're manufacturing here and it's being sold outside of the United States, though. So who needs to take action? Well, the manufacturer does. If you're packing or filling, if you're labeling, or if you're a distributor, if you have an own brand or a private label brand, or if you're relabeling. So manufacturer makes sense. So basically it's your facility, any establishment, including an establishment of an importer that manufactures or processes goods to be distributed in the US. And also if you're taking somebody else's formula and putting your logo on it, you must register. Who is the responsible person? This is a term that the FDA really likes. It's basically the brand owner. So you are responsible for managing all of your product listings, adverse event reporting, and safety substantiation, all of your label, and documenting any fragrance allergens and disclosures, and any other records related to that particular product. You are responsible for it. So when I say you, it's whoever is the brand owner. So if you're a private labeler, you're responsible. If you are custom manufacturing, you are responsible. And of course, you can always get the assistance of a U.S. agent to help you do that as well. But that U.S. agent works on behalf of the responsible person, but the FDA knows that the brand is the responsible person. Another thing required by MoCRA is good manufacturing practices. And there are no exemptions for this. There are terms related to certain financial income levels that will make you exempt from MoCRA, but not all parts of MoCRA are exempt. And I'll explain that in a little bit. But good manufacturing practices is definitely required. This is intended to protect the public health and ensure products are not adulterated. And so if you're not GMP, then there's a good chance that the FDA will say you're adulterating your products. So be expected to train your staff on GMP practices and review your current SOPs and identify any gaps. Adequate safety substantiation. I think the FDA likes some really big words. To simplify this, you need to test your product for safety, whether that be microbial analysis. Evaluating safety is really the priority for MoCRA. They just want to make sure that nobody's going to be, having rashes or having adverse events or having a major issue that would require you to have a product recall. So be expected to maintain all records related to your testing. Some of the testing involves the microbial, meaning you're not going to have any growth, fungal growth, bacterial growth in your product. You're testing the shelf life of your product to make sure that if you're saying on your packaging that it's going to last 1 year and it lasts 3 months, then you have an issue. And so shelf life testing is an actual lab evaluation where they take a sample of your product and do either rapid testing or accelerated testing to see the safety and the lifespan of that product. Toxicology and clinical evaluations. This is your clinical trials. So if you're going to make a claim that a product is going to grow your hair, you need to have proof that it does. And in that case, that's considered a drug. So another thing could be testing mascara wands to make sure that the multi-use and all of that isn't going to create a hazard to the eye. And that's kind of some examples of using in-use testing with an ophthalmologist or dermatologist. So FDA has some new power. They've been given some new enforcements. They can now do mandatory recalls. They can demand access to your records. They can inspect your facility. And yes, this is for cosmetic manufacturers and brands. They can issue warning letters, which you've seen are public. They can suspend your facility registrations and your manufacturing. They can place a country, a company, or the products on import alert and detain imported products. So my suggestion is if you have a business and you're selling a product and you have insurance, look into getting recall insurance coverage. If they have reason to believe that a product or an ingredient is unsafe, misbranded, or adulterated, regardless of which country it's manufactured in, they have the right to enforce that mandatory recall. And even similar products that might have similar ingredients, they might think that that might pose a similar risk, especially if they're manufactured in the same place. And that means that those products will be recalled as well. FDA won't access your formulas. Although on the OTC side, you have to register percentages of your ingredients, including the actives. They're not going to ask for your financial data, your shipping, your pricing, your sales information. And again, the whole purpose of this is to ensure customer safety. So what is a serious adverse event? Well, there's an adverse event, and then there's a serious adverse event. Serious adverse events are anything where if the product is used as it's intended and it is causing an event such as a death, or if it's life-threatening or the person is hospitalized, it creates a disability or incapacity, it creates a congenital abnormality or a birth defect, it might cause an infection or even disfigurement, you have 15 days to report that event, this adverse event, to the FDA. How do you get that information? Well, MoCRA now requires you to put on your labels an adverse event reporting contact. So they have the right now to contact you, a customer, and you need to make yourself available to them, and you need to be able to answer them quickly because you have 15 days to assess whether that event is considered serious or not for you to report it to the FDA. If it's not an adverse event, under your GMP practices, you should be having a documentation process for adverse event reporting or any complaints. I know on the salve side, part of our GMP process, we have a form. If somebody has an issue with something, we document the lot number, the situation, where they purchased it from, the ingredients in that product, what was the outcome, what was our communication with that customer. So that's just scratching the surface of what is required for adverse event reporting for the FDA. And if you are making $1 million or more over the past 3 years, you have to keep those records for 6 years. And if you're considered a small business, which is less than $1 million over the past 3 years, you have an obligation to keep those records for 3 years. And again, FDA has access to those records. And I'll show you now where you can get an example form for looking at the adverse event reporting. If you go to the Citron website, citronexperts.com, on the upper right, there's a button called Citron Learn Store. If you click on that and scroll down to MoCRA, you'll see here an entry to download the PDF. And this is the PDF 3500A. And it's a downloadable and fillable form that you can use to submit your adverse event reporting. The important thing about the adverse event reporting is it has to be somebody on the other end to address it, to respond on the company side. The responsible person needs to be able to take that information, respond quickly, evaluate the urgency of the situation, and submit the data to the FDA very fast. Another new MoCRA requirement is label changes and adverse event reporting. So like I said before, now you have to put on your label some contact information that allows the customer to reach you in the event of an urgent situation. And you can also put this on your website, but that's voluntary for the website, but for the product, it's mandatory. Now, there's not a lot of information about how that information should be presented at this time. Some people are wanting it to be a QR code. Some of it can be an email address, a website link. You can do it that way too, because the rules haven't really been defined just yet on how they want that to be addressed. But the point is, you have to have somebody that is in the US to respond and to contact that person back and to facilitate the conversation with the FDA. So if you're a foreign company and you're selling cosmetic products in the US or distributing, you must have an adverse event reporting contact on that label that reaches a US person, actual person, not a voicemail, but an actual person. And you have 15 days after becoming aware of that adverse event to report, and then 30 days to submit any potential fragrance or flavor ingredients that might have led to that reaction. And you must also keep those records for 1 year to report back to the FDA. Hazardous ingredients is also on the alert of the FDA. As you know, the talc situation with Johnson & Johnson. Talc is a powder material that is used in makeup and body powders and things like that. But they have been finding asbestos contained in the talc as well. And so the FDA is now trying to come up with a plan of how to safely test the asbestos and determine what the allowable limit is, or if there is an allowable limit. Or if the talc should be not used at all. There are natural products that you can use to avoid any potential risks, like arrowroot powder, that I think is better in cornstarch. PFAS, as you know, those are chemicals found in cleaning products, water-resistant fabrics, nonstick cookware. They're in stain-resistant coatings and carpets and upholstery. In skincare products, PFAS can be found in shampoo and nail polish, eye makeup, sunscreen, shaving creams, and even dental floss. These PFAS have been known to cause thyroid and liver damage. And the FDA has not issued guidance on this just yet either. But you can see here the dates that they are planning to do this. Colors is another one. They haven't established color rules yet, but there are colors that are banned from products. And I believe that's on the Learn Store as well. Fragrance allergens is a new thing. This is very concerning for Salve as a manufacturer. We manufacture plant-based material, products using natural ingredients. Now, fragrance allergens can cover both natural and synthetic ingredients. And they haven't established the percentages on how much you can use or what the parameters are before it becomes a potential allergen. But if you're looking at international standards, anything greater than 0.01% on a rinse-off product, you're going to have to identify it on your label as a potential allergen for fragrance. And 0.001% for a leave-on product. Can you imagine that? A lotion with 0.001 or less of a fragrance. Sometimes you need more than that just to cover the smell of the natural ingredients. So you can use them, but you're going to have to be putting, information on your labels that these are potential allergens. Again, the rules haven't really been defined, but I'd like to show you some of the examples that they're putting internationally as allergens. And again, this is concerning for a natural manufacturer. And some of you who are in the cannabis space that are on the webinar as well, you'll see a lot of these are terpenes. So whether synthetic or natural, cinnamon, patchouli, basil, lemongrass, ylang-ylang, clove, lemon, honey's on there, jasmine. These are all very common materials. Rose, neroli, which is orange blossom, orange, palmarosa, geranium, thyme, ginger. It's pretty amazing. I mean, I use most of these things. It's pretty concerning. But if you look on the left, you see your D-limonene. For those of you who are in the cannabis, your terpenes, you're going to have to be reporting those. There is also a new change for professional use products. You basically now have to put that on your label as well. And when MoCRA, I put out a podcast in June last year related to MoCRA and some of the things that were coming out. And at that time, they didn't really describe professional use very well, but I make professional use products. And what does that mean? That means that I make products for back bar, for spas and estheticians and doctors to use in their service. So chiropractors can put a muscle rub on their patient. That to me is professional use. It's intended by a trained person to do it. Professional use can potentially also mean different bottle sizes. But now the FDA has defined it as if you are intending for a product to be used by a person who is licensed in their field, and in this case, it's related to cosmetics only, whether it's cosmetology, nail care, hair care, or aesthetics, then you're going to have to put on your packaging professional use. There's not a lot of information or instructions on where that should be listed on the label or how, but it will be coming out. In the past, just saying professional use only was sufficient. But again, we're still waiting on some more information. So additionally on the label, you should have product identity. What is the product? It is a face oil. It is a lactic acid chemical exfoliant. You'll have to put the net contents, the ingredient declaration, which is your INCI list, your business name and address, safe use instructions. These are pretty basic. Those are there before. This also applies to OTC. OTC has more. But I'd like to point out the very last item there, the safe use instructions. Not a lot of cosmetic brands are doing that. They're not saying do not use if pregnant or breastfeeding. Do not apply to eye area. There have not been a lot of rules that I've seen on cosmetic products being used in a safe way. Again, the FDA is very concerned about safe use and adverse events. Something to be mindful about. Label changes. You're going to have to be adding your fragrance. You're going to have to add your contact info for adverse event reporting and professional use. And if you'd like more information on labeling guidelines for cosmetics, you can go to the Learn store under Cosmetics and MoCRA and see some instructions there that are provided by the FDA. Retailers. Now, if you're planning to sell in a large store, grocery store, brand, retail distribution, malls, independent stores, Sephora, Ulta, any of those, you might have to be expected now to prepare some of this information to prove to them that you are registered with MoCRA. That means you might have to put your product listing numbers when you apply, your product labeling information, screenshots and submissions that you are registered in the platform Cosmetics Direct, and prove that you don't have any adverse event reporting for that particular product. It's not required, but it's coming. I was wondering about this when they first announced MoCRA. I was thinking, man, how are we going to get into the stores and prove our products are safe? And I knew that there was going to be an identification of some kind, but I don't know how that's going to be once the stores start requiring it. If you've come across that, I'd like to know your experience. If you could put it in the notes there in the comments, that if you've experienced retail stores requiring proof of this. You might want to take a screenshot of this. These are your deadlines. Look, July 1, it just passed. What's the July 1 deadline? You have to have your facility registered. Now, as of today, your facility must be registered. As of today, your products should be registered. But don't panic. You're not going to be fined or written up at this point. Although it's going to happen at some point. I think that their FDA might be very overwhelmed by the amount of entries into their system, but you should definitely take the initiative to prioritize this for your company. Your adverse event reporting should have already taken place. You need to have your labels updated by the end of this year on your packaging for adverse event reporting. Again, it's not optional. This is required by the FDA now. This is an ongoing obligation now too. So once you register your facility and your products, you have to maintain those registrations. GMP, the good manufacturing practices, the deadline is the end of 2026. What does that even mean? Well, the FDA hasn't even set out guidance yet on what we should be following as far as GMP. There are European standards, the ISO 22716, that they are referencing because that's a common one and used forever across manufacturing. And they're using that as an example as a guide as they develop their own. There might be some information missing from ISO 22716, but the GMP guidelines will be published and will be expected to comply by the end of 2026. Again, GMP only applies to the manufacturing process. Professional use product labeling, well, you should be doing that now, but they haven't set instructions on where placement, so we're working on that. But if you're making a professional use product, which essentially now means a higher % of an active ingredient, and a potentially unsafe product, if used by the public, you need to be putting professional use. Fragrance allergens should be listed on your packaging as early as January 2026 after they've identified what the parameters are, as well as color allergens. Okay. To simplify who needs to do what, regardless of your size, if you are considered a small business, which is that far right column, you need to do everything. You need to do everything except register your facility or your product. If you're making greater than 1 million over the past 3 years, you have to do everything. If you're a facility, you have to do everything. The only difference is the amount of years you have to keep your records. Now, there are exceptions on the small business side about registering your facility and your product. And those disqualifications now, meaning you have to participate in the facility and product registration, is if you're making a product that regularly comes into contact with the mucous membrane of the eye. That could be an eyeliner, that could be a mascara, that could be a serum, an eye serum. If you're making a product that is injected, you are disqualified from not registering, meaning you still have to register your product and facility. What is injected? Well, if your first thought is like fillers and Botox, those are technically considered medical devices. But what you can think of here on a cosmetic side is the tattoo industry, injecting color. Now, there's a big debate on the tattoo side because, the color is going past the dermal layer into the skin. And that's also something similar to what the fillers do and the Botox. So this might end up being, the tattoo industry might end up being a medical device. So if you're creating a product that's injected into the skin or intended for use for internal or intended to alter your appearance for more than 24 hours, what would be that kind of product? Maybe lash extensions or shellac nails. Those would be considered lasting for more than 24 hours. Or if they're not normally removed by the customer, meaning you have to go to a professional to remove whatever that thing is that they put on your body for cosmetic purposes. Those people are disqualified from the small business exemption. I'd like to talk about U.S. agent responsibilities. If you're a foreign company, you might already be familiar with U.S. agent. And what that means is if you need representation with the FDA and you're a foreign company, the FDA doesn't want to work with you on the cosmetic side if you're foreign. If you're OTC, that's a different story. But on the cosmetic side, they're requiring you to have a U.S. representative to represent you with the FDA. So they can assist in your communication. So if the FDA needs to talk to you, they're going to go to your U.S. agent first. If they go to your U.S. agent and U.S. agent doesn't respond, then they're going to come to you and they're going to say, hey, you said you had a U.S. agent. And and that U.S. agent is not authorized or validated by their system, then you're probably going to get written up. But you are expected to have a U.S. representative to communicate on your behalf, as well as them to communicate through you. So you're basically the liaison. Your U.S. agent is also there to help review and disseminate and route and respond to all communications, including emergency communications. They are not required to submit adverse event reporting on your behalf, but they can help you because that's the responsible person's job. So U.S. agents can also assist FDA in scheduling your inspections, and that will happen, especially if you're doing OTC and cosmetic. It's going to happen. It happened to Salve. We had, because we were making OTCs. So we've had our FDA inspections. It's going to happen. Ensuring the accuracy of your registration and your listing information is also what your U.S. agent will do for you. So you don't have to worry about that. They maintain it all. And then if they have any questions or need any additional information, they can come to you. Again, registrants of foreign establishments subject to this must designate a single U.S. agent, one agent for their brand. That agent must reside and maintain a place of business in the U.S., and it may not be a mailbox, an answering machine, or a service, or other place where a person as acting as an agent is not physically present. Some additional responsibilities of U.S. agent is to cooperate in the readiness of your FDA record inspections. So if you are reporting adverse events, then you have your liaison to help with that process. They also maintain your safety substantiation information for your products and allergen information. And they will also make sure that they're on top of all the MoCRA rules and to make sure you're compliant as well. They're basically your guide. Again, if you are using or referencing an unauthorized U.S. agent, or the FDA believes that the information is not correct, then they can open a compliance case for you and send you a deficiency letter. And yeah, those things are not fun. Who wants to deal with that? Some additional services that a U.S. agent can provide for you is to do the actual registration. They can do your product and facility registration. They can help you with any recalls. They can help you with any import holds. They can help you with label compliance, adverse event evaluation and reporting. They can do that for you or with you, but for you, and assist you with warning letters. Some key takeaways. You need to update your labels. That means you have to review your labels firstly to make sure you're not making any OTC claims, structure function claims, making claims of a disease or a medical reference. You can't say this is used for people with cancer. You can't say that this product is if you have arthritis or pain or tendonitis or muscle pain. I see that quite often on the cannabis side. You're making a muscle rub, making medical claims, you're making a drug. It's kind of shocking if you haven't heard this information and you're coming from that space. But yes, you do need to have a professional person who knows the regulatory side to review your labels. And it's not just your labels, it's your marketing material, it's your website, it's how you respond to the customers. If you are making a muscle rub and you say muscle rub, that's fine. That's not a drug at that point. You're just saying a muscle rub. You're not saying it's for pain. You're not saying it's for tendonitis or arthritis, but you're just saying muscle rub, that's fine. But if your customer is going onto your website and writing a review, oh my gosh, this helped me with my arthritis, you can't respond and say, wow, I'm glad that helped you. You can't respond because now you're admitting to the public that this is considered a drug. So review your labels, make sure you're not making any inappropriate claims as far as structure function claims. Review your social media as well, and make those changes to your labels. When you make those changes to your labels, you also need to identify if that product is for professional use, and you need to have your adverse event contact information that's a US-based contact. You also need to be putting safety precautions and instructions for how to use your product. If you need help with that, I can guide you on that. We've got a team of clinical research folks that can help guide you on some of that. You also have to put any allergen information, but again, we don't know that information. So guess what? You might have to update your label again. I think this MoCRA thing is not in the best interest of small businesses, it looks like. So you also have to be prepared to show proof of compliance, show your records that you've tested your products. Whatever method is that you've chosen, there are no rules yet that the FDA has put out as far as you need this, this, and this, and this. They haven't done that yet, but they are expecting you to show some proof of that product being tested for safety. And if you're not sure what you need, we can help you. Citron can help you. You also need to establish adverse event reporting contact and procedures within your company. So if somebody contacts your company, who is that designated person in your company to manage that process? And you also need to ensure that your manufacturing process is GMP, good manufacturing compliant, and make sure you have records for that. Now, there's no such thing as FDA certified facility. There is no such thing. You can hire third-party people to come in and do an inspection, and that's fine. And they might establish their own certificate, but that's not going to hold up to anybody. It's great that you did that, but that doesn't really mean much to the FDA until they come and do their inspection themselves. If you need a third-party validation or ISO certification, that's fine. If that helps you sell your product or distribute your product, that's fine. But the FDA doesn't, the FDA isn't going to deem that GMP until they come and do their own inspection. It's good that you're doing it because you need to have the internal processes in place. That way, when you do get a surprise inspection, because those inspections are not planned, they just show up. When they do come, you have everything ready to go and you've already been doing it for a while. So it's good that you look into a third-party certification, but you don't have to do it. But again, FDA will surprise visit you, and what they will do is they will come and say, let me see your GMP binder. Let me see your standard operating procedures. Let me see your adverse event reporting process. They're going to ask you things like, who are you sending these products to? Are they distributed outside of Texas or in Texas? Are they distributed outside of your state or outside of the country? Who's purchasing it? Are you doing wholesale, professional use, retail? They're going to ask you those types of questions. So you need to have the answers ready to go. And the GMP side of it, it's very critical because that just means that you're not cross-contaminating your raw materials, you're sanitizing your tools, you're wearing proper safety gear, your PPE materials. That's just a few. So you need to have that in check and be ready to prove that you're compliant. And the other thing that you need to do too is register. You need to obtain your facility information, your DUNS number, which is basically your credit report, and you need to register your facilities and you need to register your products. Yeah. And again, July 1st of this year was the deadline. So how do you get started? Well, there's a couple things you can do. You can do it yourself. You can have an in-house regulatory team created, or if you don't have one already, and you can. It's not fun, especially if you have multiple products. And even if you are not even if you're exempt, let's just say you're not making the $1 million or more, and let's just say you're not creating products that affect the eye mucous membranes or injected, you don't meet that criteria that would not allow you to be exempt. I would suggest that you can do this yourself. It'll be a lot easier if you get something that's complicated, if you have complicated products, or if you have products that you're not sure if they're drugs or not. And sometimes it's not just the claim, sometimes it's the ingredients you're using. I'll give you an example. I've seen this a lot in the tattoo industry. I've done some research on probably 17 tattoo brands. And of those, only one brand was compliant to the FDA rules for lidocaine, the numbing ingredient that's used for tattoos. There are other brands there on the tattoo industry that are just free, doing whatever they want with the lidocaine, whatever percent. They're not following rules. They're not following OTC monograph rules. They're not registering their product and they're selling it. So it's like a Wild West of cosmetics. So even if you're not saying it does anything and it just has lidocaine in it, you're making a drug. So those active ingredients have parameters that you have to stay within as a drug, and then as well as for retail. So even if you're putting 2% salicylic acid in a product, that's a drug. That's a drug. On the SPF side, I get this all the time. What if I want to put SPF? You can't. You can put with zinc oxide, but you can't put the percent, and you can't make a claim it's a sunscreen or a sunblock or sun protectant. You can't say anything like that. You can't say percent. You can't do the math and put SPF 14 or 30 or 100 or whatever. You can't. So yes, so starting with your compliance, you do it yourself. Which requires you to have most likely a dedicated person because it's a lot of administrative work, depending on how many products you have. Or you can work with a U.S. agent such as Citron, who can facilitate all of that stuff and also educate you in the process. And if you'd like to schedule a discovery meeting, there's a little shortened URL right there to sign up for that. Okay, and also just a little information about Citron. This is their website, citronexperts.com. Again, the whole idea is to make lemonade out of the sour lemons that the FDA throws at you. And Citron also provides additional services through partner experts. So if you're looking to do an FDA audit to help you prepare like a mock audit and help you get your GMP and your SOPs in line, they can do that for you. They can also provide you with access to attorneys that specialize in your area, such as the supplements or OTC or any drug claims that you're making, or also help you to deliberate with the FDA on your behalf. If you need access to formulation experts to help review your formulas, make sure that your ingredients are compliant with MoCRA, and to also make sure that you're using safe percentages, they can do that as well. If you're needing safety substantiation, which is the testing of your product, the clinical testing, the microbial shelf life testing, we have access to labs that can assist you as well. Clinical trial experts, if you're needing to have a clinical trial designed, if you're trying to prove a claim that this is for anti-wrinkles, it will improve, reduce your wrinkles, you need to go through a clinical trial process to prove the efficacy of what you're stating before you start marketing your product because you're making a drug. And if you need assistance with any branding or marketing or product commercialization, packaging, so forth, they have access to that as well, or you have access to that. The Learn Store is in development. There's a lot of content on there now for free, but it will be a platform for you to access expert information and communicate with our expert partners as well. Again, if you'd like to schedule a discovery meeting to kind of help you with your product, understanding your compliance or what you need to do, you're welcome to do that. At this time, we can answer any questions. Let's see. Are we sharing the page about reporting? Brutus, what do you mean?
Hey, you were actually your mouse was moving at the same time where you were showing exactly where they can go to receive their documents if they have to report, but it wasn't showing. So that's what that was. I
The
didn't know what.
documents. All right, let's see if I
Yeah,
can jump
yeah.
back to that
You went to
page.
the Citron, but it didn't come up. So just
Okay,
wanted.
okay, okay. Oh, so it's the Citron Learn Store. So it's citronexperts.com. And then on the Learn Store, I'll see if I can pop it up. It's under the MoCRA section. And it's a PDF that you can edit. Definitely recommend that you go get that. It's free.
So, Dahlia, we have some questions that we got before the webinar.
Okay.
The first question was, what if I discontinued my product? What do I do?
Okay, so if you're registering your product in the portal and you update it regularly, which is every year, to make sure that the information is accurate. If you are discontinuing a product, you also have to let the FDA know that you're discontinuing that product. You can't just like ignore that that registration is still there. So they think it's still active in commerce until you manually go and unsubscribe that product.
Okay, we have another one. It says, how does MoCRA impact hemp-derived products, particularly in terms of labeling and safety requirements?
The hemp thing really concerns me because of the whole CBD, the CBD percentage. So the cannabis industry goes and they take their what they're calling a COA, which is not really a COA. It's a potency test to prove that it's like their THC levels are below the threshold. Beyond that, what they need to be thinking about is their claims, because I've seen in most cases that the cannabis industry, the products that they're using for topicals are intended to be for pain or treat depression or anxiety or help with sleep. Oh, like those are all drugs. So you can only say you're making a muscle rub. That's really it. You can't really tell people it does anything else. You can't say that it helps with this or great for people with arthritis or joint pain, or you can't say those things. So first of all, you need to reevaluate your labels and make sure that you're not using ingredients or making claims for the product, and redo your labels. Make sure you're testing that product as well, not just for the percent of THC, but also for safety. And some of those products are jars. You're sticking your fingers in and you're introducing contaminants. So you're creating a high risk product too. So making sure that the safety of that product is there is important.
Okay, another question was, what if I'm buying a bulk product from a third-party manufacturer? Do I have to register if I'm not making it?
If you're buying bulk, I suspect that you are filling the container. So if you're If you are melting and pouring, or if you're adding an ingredient such as CBD or whatever active your special ingredient that you guys manufacture, or if you're filling in bottles, you are manufacturing. You're manufacturing. So that is part of the process. You do have to register as a facility as well.
The last question we have is, I'm an indie brand that meets small business requirements. I'm making anti-aging products, including face and eye serums, and some simple ingredient, such as castor oil base slash and brow growth serums. Do I still need to register even if they are natural ingredients and also a small business?
It's a really good question. And I appreciate that because we make natural products all day long. And it's easy to say, hey, that will, especially on the social media, on the TikTok, everybody's like, oh, use these together, grow your hair. You're making a drug. If you're making claims for growth, first of all, and even if you're a small business, you're considered making a drug. If you're using a natural product such as castor and you're putting it on a wand for your eyelashes, you're now not exempt because you do not meet that criteria. Let me see if I can find that page real quick. Because here now you're making a product that can regularly come into contact with the mucous membrane of the eye. So now you do have to register your product and your facility. Even if you're not making it, you need to obtain that information and register appropriately. Any other questions? All
No,
right.
that was all we had for questions.
Okay, very good. All right. If you do come up with some questions and you need to reach me, you can reach me at my email address down there on the on the screen there. And of course, you can contact us through our website. And if you have any other ideas or questions or need assistance with your labeling and making sure you're compliant, or if you have questions about OTC, we can assist you as well.